for a moment, so I'm not just a disembodied voice on this tour. My name is Kristen. We're so glad you could join us today for a virtual tour of the Conservatory. I coordinate our volunteer programs here at the Conservatory, as well as our volunteer tour guide program. So today I'll be walking around with you all for about an hour. We're going to start here in Horticulture Hall. We're actually going to get to go into our show house to get a sneak peek of our spring flower show. And then we will head to the back area, which is behind the scenes. It's not normally open to the public, so that you can see some of the ways that we propagate plants here before ending up at our beehives. So you'll get to see a lot of the conservatory, but there's even more to see when you come in person as well. I'm going to flip my camera around so that you can actually see what you're here for. And I'll give you all a little bit of background about the conservatory. But first, my coworker Heather is also on.
Hello, everybody. Happy
Questions. You can put them in the Q&A. Oh, go ahead, Heather. Go ahead.
Sorry, there was like a pause. I think it was just a glitch. Hello, I'll be doing my best to answer some questions in the Q&A throughout. Since there's so many people, some will be able to be out loud, some I'll answer in the chat if I can, and I'll drop as many relevant links into the chat for you too. And I'm the School and Groups Program Coordinator, so if you have any interest in learning more about how to visit with a group or with your school, you can direct those to me as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Heather. So the Garfield Park Conservatory, for folks who haven't been here before, we opened in 1908, so we've been around for a while, and we're designed by landscape architect Jens Jensen. So we have a really unique partnership here at the Conservatory between the Chicago Park District and the nonprofit Garfield Park Conservatory Alliance. The Park District are all of the wonderful horticulturists who are taking care of these plants, making sure this place is a beautiful place to visit. And then the nonprofit alliance, we work on family programming like Heather was just talking about. We've got schools that come in, and we do a lot of adult programming as well, fundraising and special events. So right now we are open. I know that's a question a lot of folks have. We're doing timed ticketed reservations, so you can sign up to come visit online. We book our tickets 2 weeks out, and we're open every day except for Mondays and Tuesdays. So I think Heather will put some information about that in the chat. If you've never been here before, I'm currently in Horticulture Hall, which is one of 8 public display houses we have. We've got about 10 acres of gardens outside, in addition to the 2 acres of landscaping under glass inside. So if you come and visit us, a lot of folks have come here for years and didn't even know we had outdoor gardens. So yeah, there's a lot to explore here. This room that we're in right now is the only public display house that wasn't a part of the original design of the Garfield Park Conservatory. So in 1908, it opened, this didn't exist. And that meant we didn't have a way to connect the plants in the collection with the propagation houses in the back. So if I know there's some folks from Chicagoland here and then maybe some out of state too, but if you've been here in the winter, you know anything about our winters, transporting a tropical plant to and from the collection and the greenhouses and going outside is not ideal in the winter. So this hallway really serves as a way to connect these 2 spaces so we can safely move our plants back and forth. This room is currently closed to the public, but in non-COVID times, this room also serves as a really great meeting space. There's always families in here having lunch. You can find business meetings in here, weddings. It really just provides a great place for folks to gather. So in this room, about 5 years ago, it got replanted to represent plants from the ginger family. So that's things like gingers, turmeric, bananas, heliconias. Those are sometimes called lobster claws. And so that's what this room really aims to represent. You'll find some other things in here that aren't in that family, but that's the main grouping. So I want to show you one of my favorite bananas that we have in here. So back here we have one of the varieties of bananas we have on display are these really stunning blood bananas. They have these amazing variegated leaves, and that's mainly what they're planted for. They do grow fruit, but the fruit is very slender, and we'll say it's not tasty enough that folks are planting this for the fruit. It has really big seeds in it. It's just not what you'd really want to eat, but with this foliage, you can tell why we plant it here. So anytime you visit the conservatory, there's usually about 6 to 7 varieties of bananas on display. But in the wild and through cultivars right now, it's estimated that there are over about 1,000 varieties of bananas in the world. But despite all of that diversity, agriculturally, we really only grow 95 to 99% of the bananas we grow for agriculture are one single variety. I'm sure maybe a lot of you know what that is. It's the Cavendish banana. So Cavendish bananas, they don't have seeds like the blood banana I was just telling you about. They reproduce via pups, which are basically a banana plant will send up a genetically identical plant next to it, and that's how it reproduces. So with all of these bananas being the same type of banana, and them all being genetically identical, they are really at risk of pests because there isn't any genetic diversity where one banana might, have a mutation to fight off a fungus. So it is a little bit risky to plant that many of the same type of banana, especially since they are genetically identical. You may notice that I've been saying banana plant and not a banana tree. That is because bananas are not trees. It's a common misconception that bananas are trees because especially once they're bigger, they look like trees. They look like they have this big trunk. But really, the banana trunk, you can see down here, it's not really a trunk. It's just a bunch of tightly packed leaves that are overlapping called a pseudostem. So that's just a fun piece of banana trivia for everyone. If anyone asks, the bananas are in fact herbaceous plants. They are not trees. So I'm going to turn around here and show you our artist garden. So this garden was renamed 2 years ago to be the artist garden. And every year it's going to display plants from a particular artist, either plants that they painted or maybe plants that they grew in their own gardens. So I don't know if any of you came and saw the Monet exhibit we had here last year. It was stunning. But this year, this garden is going to be honoring Charles Ethan Porter. And Charles Ethan Porter was an African-American still life painter whose artwork is getting a lot more recognition now. So once all of these fabulous tulips are done blooming, we'll start planting out these beds to really reflect his artwork. So you're going to see a lot of things in here that he painted in his still lifes, like strawberries and sunflowers and carnations. And then every year out here, we have a living wall. So you can kind of see the water hookup here, but this will be a wall that looks like one of his paintings, Autumn Landscape. And so it will be featuring grasses and flowers that resemble the textures and the colors of that painting. So right now we have these beautiful tulips, but stay tuned. Definitely sign up for our newsletter so that you can be told when this will be open with that exhibit. I'm gonna head back inside. I know I'm trying to move the camera slow so that we get a good steady image for everyone. So at the conservatory, we obviously have a really amazing plant collection, but we have a lot of great art in here as well. We have a lot of really unique statues. In our desert house, we have some really cool pottery that hangs from the ceiling. But one of folks' favorite things here is this fountain. So this fountain was a gift from our sister city of Casablanca, and it was constructed on site here in 2003. 3 Moroccan artisans were flown in, and all of the tiles were cut and put in place here. And the tiles are all from the city of Fez. So if I get close up here, hopefully you'll be able to see how absolutely intricate this design is. These tiles were all, again, cut here. And this is really a remarkable piece that we have. There's a lot of weddings that have this as the background here at the conservatory. So I'm going to head in now to our show house. So we have 8 public display houses here. You just saw Horticulture Hall, which is one of them. I'm about to go into the show house. We also have a palm house, a fern room, a desert house. So you're only getting a small glimpse into what you can really see here at the conservatory. Our show house is home to 2 shows a year. We have our winter flower show, and then we have our spring flower show, which is what you are about to see now. So our flower shows change from year to year, depending on the theme. And this year, the theme is saturation. So instead of a typical garden display where you would see different colors interspersed throughout a landscape, each bed focuses on a specific color so that you can really be immersed in all of the tints and hues within that color. So it's really a spectacular show this year. It starts at the beginning of February every year and then goes to Mother's Day. So we still have a few more weeks of the show. But the planning for these shows happens way in advance. Basically, as soon as we start planting out one show, we're already thinking about the show for next year. So I'm going to head over here where it's a little bit less crowded so that we can see some things. This year, something really spectacular about the show is that all of the annuals and biennials you see here were started from seed. So except for our anemones and our ranunculus. So that is a huge task for the variety of plants that we have in here. If you've been to our spring flower shows before, you've certainly seen some of the azaleas in our collection. This year we planted them in these really amazing groupings so that you can really be immersed in the colors. So our azaleas have a lot of history to them as well. Some of the azalea plants that you see in this show, they date back kind of to the Chicago World's Fair because they were propagated from azaleas that were on display at that show. So there's a lot of history in them. And one of the big main tasks that you'll see that we do with these is once they're done blooming, all of these blooms, and this is just a few of the plants. There's more in the back and all around here. But all of these blooms are ideally removed by hand once the plant is done blooming. And that is because once it's done blooming, we want to make sure that this plant isn't going to seed. If it goes to seed, it's using its energy to produce those seeds, when instead we want it to use its energy to bloom even more the next year. So as you can imagine, it's a huge task to remove all of these, and it's something that our dedicated volunteers do. In non-COVID times, our volunteer groups as well will help with that. But I think around May, our volunteers are pretty sick of removing azalea blooms, but it's how we get this beautiful show year after year. All right, I'm gonna head to the other side real quick. So one of my favorite flowers in this show are these echiums. This particular variety is called the Tower of Jewels. And obviously they are just absolutely stunning and very unique flowers that we have in here. They are a biennial plant. So its first year of life, it's not going to flower. It's going to flower in its second cycle of life. And something I really like about them is due to their high nectar content, whenever you're in here, I hope maybe you can see there are always honeybees on them gathering nectar to bring back to their hives. I'll pause here for a minute in case anyone wants a screenshot of these. So our other flower show that we have during the year is our winter flower show. And that usually runs about Thanksgiving to right around the new year. And those usually feature a lot of great conifers as well as a lot of poinsettias. So definitely be on the lookout for that. So over in our yellow bed are some of my favorite flowers. So I do want to stop over here and see them. So in our show, you'll find a number of Cymbidium orchids that are really stunning. And they're often commonly called boat orchids because their bottom petal can resemble a cup or a boat. But they're thought to be one of the earliest cultivated orchids in the world. You can find mention of them all the way back in the writings of Confucius. So they've been popular for a long time and for good reason. I'll show you these over here as well. These Cymbidium orchids, and I'm gonna have to go around, sorry. They're really special because they don't just have, one flower at the end of their stem. They have this giant spray of flowers. And this spray is super long lasting. These, I believe, started at the beginning of the show in February. They had just started to open and they're still going strong. So they're just some really stunning flowers that we have here in this show. I personally am terrified of growing orchids. So they really amaze me that we can keep them looking so great year after year because they are a part of our permanent collection. I'm going to pause here at some of our hydrangeas. We have some really beautiful blue ones on the other side as well. So the hydrangeas are part of our permanent collection, so we have to keep them happy year round. So they usually go on display in our spring flower shows towards the end of the show. And then once the show is over, we move our entire hydrangea collection outside. It's a really big task, but the greenhouses in the back where they normally live during the winter get extremely hot in the summer. And these plants do not want to live in there. So we take the effort of moving them all outside underneath shade cloth so that they are happy year round, so that we can always have them for display in our shows. I'm going to head to some blue ones at the end over here. So hydrangeas, some hydrangea species, whatever color their flower is the color that they will always be. But some species are capable of changing color based on the soil that they're in. And in those species, here, I'm going to get a little bit closer. You can either get blue or pink flowers depending on the type of soil. So if you have really acidic soil, that's going to make the aluminum ions in your soil available to your hydrangeas to get that blue color. But if you have really alkaline soil, then your hydrangeas, they will be pink because the aluminum won't be available to your hydrangeas. So kind of neat that they can change color like that. And these are some of our delphiniums we have. The delphiniums were started from seed all the way back in July of 2020. So you can see again how much effort goes into making sure we've got unique and beautiful plants ready for display when we want them. I was recently reading that delphiniums, which are sometimes also called larkspur, where there are wild larkspur populations where cattle farmers, graze their cattle. They have to wait until the larkspur is done blooming because the whole plant is poisonous. And there's been actually cases of cows dying from eating too much larkspur. So kind of amazing that such a beautiful, delicate flower is capable of, killing an entire cow. All right. I'm going to head this way. I am going to walk around this room a little bit and then head to the back where we've got our propagation houses that we want to show you today. Are there any questions about the spring flower show or anything else while I'm walking around back here?
Yes, so here's a couple of great questions. One is, what do you do with the tulip bulbs when they finish blooming?
Ah, that's a great question. So some of them we maintain in our collection year after year. And then usually for the past about 10 years, we've had a big tulip giveaway here at the conservatory. So we utilize volunteer groups and our horticulture volunteers to bag up all of the tulips and give them away at a big giveaway. And then we tell folks, you get the tulip bulb with the stem and the leaves still on it. And we tell people to plant that in the ground and let it die back naturally. And then it'll come back the next year for you. Last year, we were unable to host that giveaway due to COVID. So I'm not sure what will take place this year, but that would definitely be a good sign up for the newsletter to see if we do that giveaway this year.
Thank you. And are all the plants on display in pots?
That's a great question. So a lot of times that's a kind of a secret around here. You will find that a lot of the plants are in pots. It's just easier for switching them out because this show is so long, going from February to May, that we want to make sure something's always in bloom. So you can see these azaleas, they're starting to be done blooming. So we certainly have something in the back ready to bloom. This will come out soon and we'll replace it. So for flowers that we know are not going to last the whole show and will need to be refreshed with something else, keeping them in pots is a really great way for us to make that move. For things that we know will hopefully stay in the show the whole time, it is advantageous to plant it directly into the beds so that it requires less watering. So it's a little bit of a mix of pots and directly planting into the beds.
Thank you. This is going back to Horticulture Hall, and I'm not sure, but do you know how long Horticulture Hall has been open to the public?
Okay, I have in my head that the date is 1928, but that might not be right. I know that it opened in the 1920s, but the exact date, I want to say that, but I might be making that up. But right now, unfortunately, it is closed. In order to make our opening work, we have a one-way system to go through the conservatory, and we just couldn't fit Horticulture Hall in that one-way direction. So right now it's not open, but we look forward to when it can be to the public again.
Thanks. And a question, you had mentioned bananas. Can you tell everyone who gets to, we have a 6-year-old viewing today who wants to know who gets to eat the bananas off the trees there. And I thought that was a good question about all of the fruit that we have growing in the conservatory.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So with all of the fruit that you see on display, we really try to just keep it there until it's kind of starting to look bad. Because we want folks to see how food grows. You know, a lot of people have never seen a grapefruit on a tree. So being able to keep those on there so that folks can really see where their food comes from is part of kind of like our public education aspects. So nobody gets to really eat those bananas, unfortunately. That's a great question though. But we do have a demonstration garden in our outdoor gardens where we show folks how you can grow food in small spaces in Chicago, and a giving garden in the back as well. And all of that produce gets processed by our volunteers and staff and is donated to a couple of different places like the Garfield Park Neighborhood Market. I'm blanking on where else it went last year, but we do donate a lot of our produce that we grow specifically for that purpose as well.
All right, excellent. I had I know you're almost to the back. So
Yeah, no, that's
a couple
fine.
questions about the Chihuly exhibit, wondering
sure.
if there's plans to repeat it, but also if any of those pieces are still in the conservatory.
That's a great question. Sorry for spinning in a circle. I'll stop here and show you these really beautiful ginger flowers while I answer that. So the Chihuly exhibit, for those of you who don't know, we had his glass artwork displayed here. I think it was in 2001 and 2002. And most of it did not stay here, but we were able to keep some pieces that are in our aeroid house. So if you do come and visit, you'll be able to see those in the pond in the middle of that house. But as far as I know, there are no plans yet to bring it back, but that would be really cool. I know it was a favorite of a lot of people. So I'm gonna head behind the scenes here, and thank you so much for all those really great questions. So this area is not usually open to the public, so you're getting a little sneak peek of how we do things behind the scenes here. I might cut out for a second while I turn this corner, so if I do, I apologize. So we have pretty much just as much space back here as we put collection. And this is where we're growing things either to display later, or maybe they're not big enough to be in the collection yet. Maybe they are only go outside during the summer. There's a lot of reasons why plants are in these houses. So this first house that I'm in is a lot of our tropical plants, and I really want to show you what's in the back here. So give me 1 second to get there. These houses are pretty old, so all the temperature and vents is all controlled manually, and all the watering is done by hand. It's a huge effort to keep everything here happy and thriving. So as I was saying earlier, we have 10 acres of gardens outside as well, including our lily pool. So while there are native water lilies to this area, we grow tropical water lilies, and those do not want to live outside in our Chicago winters for obvious reasons. So at the end of every season, we bring these lilies inside and keep them growing in pools in our propagation houses, so that once the summer comes, they are ready to be displayed again. So these will probably move out into our propagation or into our lily pool sometime in June. We want to make sure it's last frost date. And I know in this area we say like March 15th, but it being Chicago, we like to be cautious. So they'll probably head out there at the beginning of June. I want to see if I can find any friends in here. This pool is actually full of fish as well, because the fish help with maintaining the algae population. They eat it down so that we don't have to worry about that. They seem to be avoiding me though right now. I'll see if I see any down here. But yeah, sometimes when you move the leaves, you'll see a whole grouping of little goldfish hanging out in here. We have 2 really, really special water lilies here. Well, we have 3 special water lilies here. We have a Garfield Park water lily that was hybridized on site and is certified by I think it's called like the International Water Lily Association. Heather, maybe you know the title better than I, but that's a pretty neat accomplishment that we have here. And then in the back here, we have 2 of my favorite water lilies. So while these don't look anything too inspirational right now, these are those giant Victorian water lilies. So these are the biggest water lilies in the world. Each of these pads can end up reaching almost 10 feet in diameter. And then the flowers themselves will be over a foot in diameter. So they are really, really stunning. Just purely from their size, they're an amazing thing that we have. They also are a little bit vicious. I'm going to see if Maybe you can see it better over here. So this leaf is just uncurling, and underneath the leaves, there are these really spiky features. I'm going to try to, it actually hurts. So I'm going to try to pull it up so you can see. So underneath them, they have all of these spikes. And that helps them in two ways. A, it helps them be buoyant and float. But also you can imagine if you were a little fish and you were trying to snack on this leaf, you go up to eat it and the whole bottom of the leaf is covered in spines. So that helps them stay safe from predators as well. And then right across from the largest water lily in the world, we have the smallest water lily in the world. So one of them is actually flowering, which I'm really excited about. I have small hands, so that flower is about the size of my fingernail almost. And these are actually extinct in the wild. These water lilies were endemic to a really small area in Rwanda. But due to some habitat destruction there, they went extinct there. But luckily some folks had gathered seeds and plants from it to keep it going, just cultivated inside of greenhouses. But at first they were having a really hard time getting this plant to propagate from seed. So it was, you know, a stressful situation. I think it was over at Kew Gardens, because you've got the last remaining of the smallest water lily in the world, and they just couldn't figure out how to propagate it. And that was because they were trying to do it the way that most water lilies actually propagate, where they grow underwater, they send up their stalk, and then their leaves will go on top. But someone wisely thought about, what is this plant's native habitat? And then tried to mimic that and realized that this plant, unlike other water lilies, actually needed carbon dioxide to germinate. So it couldn't start underwater like most water lilies, or all other water lilies rather do. So very lucky someone else figured that out, because then now we also get to enjoy these smallest water lilies in the world. All right, I'm gonna head back this way. I'll walk slow, hopefully, so you can see all of these water lilies. They're really, really stunning. So these propagation greenhouses, like I was saying earlier, how our hydrangeas don't like to live in here during the summer. They get really, really hot in the summer. And we do use whitewash on the windows to help cut that down. But they still can, if it's 100 degrees outside, it is even hotter in here. So these tropical water lilies are very happy in this environment. Now I'm going to show you another really neat plant that we have here. It's only going to be on display probably every 10 years or so. So I don't know if anyone has see. All right, we're getting there. So in the front of the house, we have a plant that you probably won't recognize the way that it is right now. And that is this one right here. I'll turn the other way, so hopefully the lighting will be a little bit better. So it's got this really amazing stem with these giant leaves. And this is actually the plant that the corpse flower comes from. So I don't know if any of you were able to see it. I unfortunately have never seen a corpse flower bloom, so I'm hoping that I'm able to at some point. But this plant was, maybe it wasn't this one specifically, but in 2016, we were gifted a corpse flower that was ready to bloom from the Chicago Botanic Garden. And for those of you that don't know what a corpse flower is, it is the largest unbranched inflorescence in the world. So that just means unbranched inflorescence is basically like a cluster of flowers on a big stalk. And once it started blooming, it grew 3 to 5 inches a day until it reached 70 inches tall here at the Conservatory. The record for the largest one in the world is like 11 feet. So they are some giant flowers. And they're called corpse flowers, unfortunately, because they smell very bad. And that helps attract all sorts of pollinators like flies and beetles to help pollinate them. This plant is in the aroid family, and like a lot of other aroids, it is capable of something called thermogenesis, which basically just means it can heat itself up. So the way that this plant does it is once it's blooming and it's got that really stinky smell, their flower stem, or the spadix it's called, heats up so it further volatilizes that smell so that it can reach more pollinators and get more of them to visit it. We have, I don't know if you've heard of skunk cabbage here in Illinois, but that's another aroid that can use thermogenesis. And it is one of the first things that comes up in the spring because it literally almost like melts its way through the snow. So those are some pretty cool adaptations. So once this corpse flower blooms, it's not going to bloom again for a number of years. And it really just depends on the individual flower. So it could be 2 years, it could be 13 years. We don't know. And you don't know until it really starts to bloom. In the years in between when it blooms, it just sends up this big leaf. And it'll have this big leaf for about 8 months. Then it'll go dormant again and be dormant for about 3 to 6 months, send up the leaf again, and keep doing that cycle until it's ready to bloom. So hopefully one day this one will be on display again, blooming here at the conservatory. Heather or Kate, how are we doing on time? Do we have time to go into another propagation house, or should we head to the beehives?
Why don't we, it's up to you guys. If you're comfortable going a little bit over that, you could probably visit another room. It's 142.
Okay, 142. Yeah, we'll see 2 plants and then we'll head to the beehives. So our second house here, and thank you, is another mostly tropical propagation house. And there are 2 really cool things in here that I wanted to show you. One of them is a plant that usually lives in our children's garden, but I think it's great for adults too. It's really unique. So hopefully maybe some of you have seen sensitive plants before. And these plants are amazing because they're actually capable of responding to touch. So I'll touch this leaf here. When you touch the leaf, it responds by closing up all of its little leaflets, which is really amazing. And it does it by redistributing the water within its cells. So you can imagine if an insect or something is trying to eat this and then it just shrivels up, it's a really good adaptation to keep itself safe. If there are any podcast lovers out here, there's a really good podcast from Radiolab called Smarty Plants. And they talk about this plant in particular and how some folks have done studies that show that if you do the same stimulus over and over again to this plant, it eventually, I don't want to use the word learns, but it adapts and knows not to respond to that stimulus anymore. They do a much better job of explaining it. So if that sounds interesting to you, definitely check out that episode. And then I'm going to head back here to some of our pitcher plants. I really love carnivorous plants. And we have these really amazing baskets just full of carnivorous plants back here. And these head outside in the summer. Part of our 10 acres of outdoor gardens includes a carnivorous plant bog. And these you'll see hanging from some really big trees we have back there. So these are tropical pitcher plants, but there are pitcher plants that are native to Illinois. There is some bogs in Illinois where you can find carnivorous plants like this. But I'm trying to find a good picture for y'all. Oh, here we go. So basically what pitcher plants all have in common is that they're gonna have this lip where they're gonna secrete like a sugary nectar to attract insects. And once the insects get there, see if I can, oh, that one's not open yet. Oh, here's a good one. Here's a bunch of tiny ones. So once the insects get here and they're trying to collect that nectar, eat that nectar, it's really slippery here. So they fall down into this cavity. And then different pitcher plants have different mechanisms to keep the insects inside. But basically, Once they're in there, sometimes they have waxy scales that make it hard for the insects to climb out. Sometimes they have downward pointing hairs that keep them in there. And then they start to dissolve that insect's body in a pool of enzymes that's at the bottom of here. A lot of enzymes and bacteria that dissolve that insect so that the plant can then absorb the nutrition from that insect. And a lot of these all carnivorous plants evolved these mechanisms because they grew in places where either the soil didn't have the nutrients that they needed, or maybe the soil was too acidic, so the nutrients just weren't available to the plant. So they adapted this way to get nutrients from insects, which obviously is not a common tactic of plants. None of these are flowering, but if you go on our Instagram, actually, we just posted a photo of some of these that are flowering. And a really smart thing that all carnivorous plants do is their flowers are never going to be right next to where their trapping mechanisms are, because they don't want to accidentally trap all of the pollinators that they want to help pollinate their flowers. So you'll see on any carnivorous plant, the flower will be really far away from its trapping mechanism so that it doesn't accidentally kill its own pollinators. I am going to head back to our beehives. Are there any questions while I'm walking back there?
Yes. So could you repeat the name of the podcast?
Oh, yeah. So the podcast is Radio Lab, and the episode is called Smarty Plants, like Plants. And that's the one that talks about the sensitive plant and the studies that were done.
Thank you. And a couple questions about the water lilies.
Yeah.
How, are they in a special type of water?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, and maybe I'll hop back there. I think we'll have enough time if that's okay with folks. So it's not really like a special type of water, but what is really special is the type of soil that they're in. Because if you just put, you know, this plant with this regular potting soil in that water, it would just float to the top. It doesn't want to actually stay in that pot. So we have to use a special aquatic potting soil for them. So I'll see if I can kind of show you. And then once they're in the pots, depending on the size of the pot, you're either encouraging the plant to grow more tubers, or you're encouraging the plant to grow big. So the ones that we want to display outside are going to have these bigger pots. And then the ones that we want to force to grow more tubers will be grown in smaller pots. But I don't know if it's a little glary in here, if you can see the size of the pots underneath. They're like about the size of my hand, and that's what they live in until they get put in really big pots so that they can grow big outside during the summer.
And can you tell us a little bit more about that? How do the water lilies get transported out to our outdoor lily pond?
Yeah, it's a huge, it's a giant vat. So really pot by pot, carts and like kubotas, they get moved individually. It's like a ton of labor. In past years, we usually have volunteer groups who come and help. We used to have this corporate group that would come every year before COVID to help with the water lily situation. It's really just a lot of manual labor to get them out there and get them back in.
Thank you. There's been a lot of questions, more than we'll probably have time for. So I'm just gonna grab a couple that have been asked by multiple people to start with. So can you tell a little bit about the hail damage to the glass that occurred a few years ago? Yeah,
definitely. So for those of you that don't know, in 2011, Chicago had a quick but big hailstorm, and the conservatory was hit pretty hard in that storm. I think the estimates are like 50 to 60% of the glass here had shattered. Any of the houses that had recently been updated with double laminated glass were okay, but all of the houses that had the older glass were really badly damaged. So all of the propagation houses that you just saw, the desert house, they were completely demolished, really. So it took a long time to do all of those repairs. And then they were finally completed in 2015 when we had a grand reopening. But if you look carefully in like the desert house, there's actually a few cacti that you can see the remnants of damage from like glass slicing into them. So it was a big deal. But luckily we are all recovered now and have that double laminated glass.
All right, thank you, Kristen. Looks like you're pretty close to the bees.
Yeah, if you've got another question though, that is okay.
All right, there's a
I'm gonna
lot of
walk down to the
interest in our carnivorous plants. What other carnivorous plants that we also have?
Oh, sure. So we have sundews. We have, of course, the Venus flytraps. We have butterworts. And you can find some of those if you visit in our palm house. We have like a little like glass case where you can see those. And then you can find pitcher plants in our palm house along our fountains. And Heather, are there pitcher plants in Sugar from the Sun?
Yes, there
Yeah,
are.
there are.
Mhm. There's some by the penny pond, and then also at the entrance of the fern room, if you get a
yes.
chance to visit.
Yes, perfect. So yeah, we've got a lot. Well, maybe I'll just talk about our bees here for a minute, and then we can answer any more questions that folks have. Does that sound good?
Very good.
All right. So you can see back here, this area is not open to the public, but this is where we keep a lot of the bees in our beekeeping program. We have 15 hives right now, and going into winter, we had 22 hives. So we've lost 7 hives, but that's actually a pretty good survival rate for our area. Illinois in general has about a 50% survival rate during the winter. And there haven't been a lot of studies about Chicago specifically, but just some informal surveys show that Chicago has an even worse survival rate than Illinois in general. So we're pretty excited about how well our bees have been doing year after year in the winter. Hopefully you can see some of them coming in right now with the pollen. So our beekeeping program started in 2001 with the goals of both training a group of beekeepers in the community and in Chicago so that we have responsible apiaries, and then also just helping with public education, getting folks more comfortable with bees and giving folks a better understanding of the role that they play in our food web and in our ecosystem in general. So right now you can see, hopefully you can see the pollen on their legs in their little pollen baskets as they're coming in right now, the yellow and the orange. Most of the pollen that they're bringing in right now is from like willows and maples. And then also sometimes you can even see they bring in this really beautiful blue pollen from that wood squill, or sometimes it's called Siberian squill, that you can see in the lawns. So that's really fun to look for. I'm going to see if I can find another busy hive for you all. So like I was saying, we lost 7 of our hives this winter. 3 of them just didn't make it. And then the other 4 had problems with their queens. So in some cases, the queen just went missing and they didn't have a queen anymore. And then in other cases, the queen started laying drones. So in your hives, you've got 3 types of bees. You've got your queens, whose main job is to lay eggs and continue the population of the hive. You have your drones, which are the male bees. And there's still studies about what they do in the hive and the purpose they serve. But their main purpose in life is just to mate with other queens. And then you have your worker bees. And that's what you're seeing right now. And these are the bees that do all of the foraging for pollen and nectar. They're the ones taking care of the baby bees. They're cleaning the cells. They're doing all of the real work that the hive needs to survive. So if a queen is only laying drones, that hive is just not going to last. So if you're interested in learning more about bees, we have a really great volunteer beekeeping program. Volunteers do need to take our beginning beekeeping course, which we offer in the fall and winter. That's actually my introduction to the conservatory, was as a volunteer beekeeper. And then we also have a lot of great virtual demonstrations that we did last year that we're hoping to do again this year, as well as an annual bee forum where you can learn from all sorts of scientists doing some cool work with the bees as well. And we do sell the honey from our hives here. We'll have, it's one of the ways that we raise funds for the conservatory. So we'll have honey for sale sometime in May, and that will be the honey that overwintered with the hives. So if you're a beekeeper going into winter, you want to make sure your bees have enough food to eat to make it through the winter. So you never want to take too much honey for yourself. And then instead, leave as much honey on as you think they'll need. And then if there's extra, great. And you can, you know, harvest that then once they start to replenish their stocks with some new nectar. And then we'll have another time, usually in July, where we'll sell our summer honey as well. But yeah, it's really just fun to watch how busy they are and watch them bringing in that pollen right now. But do we have any questions, Heather, about the beehives or anything else?
Yes, here's a question that's a compliment to you. How do you know so much about all of these plants, Kristen?
Well, I've worked here for a couple of years now, and we're very lucky. The horticulturists here are very generous and giving with their knowledge. And, you know, if you hang out in the desert house long enough, the horticulturists will find you and tell you some neat stuff. So it's just a really great place where people are really passionate about what they do. And so it's an easy place to learn because folks like talking about what they're doing. So, but thank you. That's very kind.
I'm trying to hop all around here. Ooh, a question. How close are you to the hive?
I'm like right here.
right on top. Does the insulation come off of those beehives?
Yeah, it will come off. And you might notice that some of them have it and some of them don't. And that is because we're constantly, you know, trying to learn here what helps the bees the most. So we'll maybe insulate some of them and not insulate others to see what really helps the bees. So it's a lot of, the head beekeeper always says, you know, if you ask 10 beekeepers the same question, you'll get 10 different answers because there's just always something to learn about the bees and different ways of doing things. So we're always kind of experimenting to try to find what works best for our colonies. Oh, here's a lot of pollen coming in.
All right, I'm trying to kind of sift through, answering multiple places. Do you have some information about the kind of soil that we use for the potted plants? I think this was related more to the spring show. I kind of talked about in the Q&A about how we have different rooms and they have different needs. And so there can be different soil based on that. But as far as those ones in the show,
that's a really good question that I don't know the answer to. I'm sure that we use a special mix. And I'm sorry, there's a bee on my phone that I want to return to the hive. So my video might get a little crazy for a minute. But I don't know. Maybe if you send me an email, I would be able to help you answer that question.
And then can you, oh, there's so many questions about the hives.
Oh, one lady is in my hair.
All right, we'll just let you head out from there. I know we're like at the 2 o'clock mark anyways. So, and yes, we have been stung by bees. That's a question.
Yes.
If we've ever been stung, I'm
a little allergic, so I'm trying to move away from the one that's in my hair right now. But yeah, you do get stung, but not often. Like, I mean, you saw how close I was, and it depends on the time of year too. Like right now, there's not a lot of like fierce competition. There's not robbing of hives. So you'll see later in the year when resources are a little bit more scarce that hives will literally rob weaker hives to steal their resources. And that's when the bees will be a little bit more aggressive. But right now, they're not too aggressive, so you don't get stung too often.
And just kind of a general answer, because there are so many beekeeping questions that we just are not gonna have time for all of them.
Oh, sure, yeah. And I'm not an expert beekeeper, to be clear.
So what I was gonna recommend to folks is that we have, besides just beekeeping classes, we also have beekeeping lectures that you can go to. They are virtual, and that's a great place to have all of your questions about bees answered by not only our resident beekeeper, but also the guest beekeepers that he is able to bring in for those. So if you go to our website, to our calendar of events, you'll be able to see all of those as well. Those are really fun to pop in on.
Yeah, sorry for my crazy camera work. I just got that bee out of my hair. Well, I'll pop back real quick into Horticulture Hall so we can see some plants on our way out. But I do just want to say a huge thank you to everyone for spending time with us on your Saturday to see a little bit of the conservatory. Again, you really only saw a small peek of what we have going on here. So it'd be great if you can come and visit. Again, you can schedule visits online. Those visits do go, those reservation times do go pretty quickly. So if you're interested, like, you can become a member of the conservatory, and extra spots are open to our members. But other ways that you can stay involved, definitely sign up for our newsletter. That's where you'll be alerted to all of our special events. So we have yoga every Saturday. I'm not sure if I talked about that earlier. We have a lot of great classes and lectures. Next month, we have a DIY windowsill herb class. That should be pretty great. So definitely sign up. If you're interested in supporting the conservatory and the work that we do here, we always welcome donations and memberships. So yeah, just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone for joining us today. And if there are any lingering questions, I can hang out for a minute or two.
Thank you so much, Kristen. That was awesome. Very well done, you guys. We have lots of compliments and thank yous from our audience. And just quickly, I want to remind you guys that these cultural institutions are made possible by the support of their communities. And I know it's been a tough year for all of us, but it's been especially hard for a lot of these institutions that just depend on, you know, gifts and donations to keep things going. So if you're able to give, or if you visit them and you buy something that's supporting them, that's awesome. And somebody had asked if I would include all of the links that Heather so graciously put in the chat for us in the follow-up email, and I will do that also. So you'll get a link to the recording of today's session, and then some information about the conservatory itself and all of the awesome programs that they offer. And you can also learn how to become a member or buy tickets.
Awesome, thank you so much. And I will plug too real quick our volunteer opportunities. Right now, they're all on pause for new volunteers, but eventually we will be able to bring them back. So if you are interested in volunteering with us, you can send me an email to just volunteering@garfieldpark.org, and I can get you started on that process as well.
Awesome. I think, yeah, Heather also did have a plug in there for becoming a volunteer. So she's right on top of that.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. This was so nice to be able to share the day with everyone.
Yeah, and we got a great day for it. So again, I thank you guys so much. If everybody who's still around, if you guys have a few minutes to please fill out our quick survey, that would be much appreciated. And everybody just enjoy their weekend.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, ladies.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.